Welcome into the November 1st episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. It's an off day for the Maple Leafs today as they get an extra day's rest before taking on Philadelphia tomorrow night down at Scotiabank Arena. Will Mitch Marner respond to his benching? Is there a rift between Keefe and Marner? We'll chat about that, plus play some co-sign, no sign today, David. All that more coming up on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me is my co-host, it's Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can also now catch us up on video on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Hit subscribe and get daily content directly to you each and every morning, Monday through Friday, including today's episode, which is going to be a decent episode. It'll be a fun little episode because there's a lot of spiciness in Leafs Nation right now, and spiciness means, well, content for guys like you and I. But look, I think that there's a lot of discussion and discourse about what went down in the game against the Anaheim Ducks the other night when Sheldon Keefe sat Mitch Marner for one shift. We spoke about it in the post-game show. If you missed it, you can go check it out last night. But both of us actually felt that he probably should have sat the entire game, but just got the one shift. It is what it is. But now there's, this belief that there's a rift between Mitch Marner and Sheldon Keefe. What's your thoughts on this entire situation, Dave?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if Sheldon Keefe hasn't been impressed with Mitch Marner's performance, and he's been critical. And we're probably not hearing a lot of the things. I mean, we're definitely not hearing everything that's being said, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the video that was shown yesterday, I think, as a head coach, you try not to let things, eke out like that so that it doesn't become a talk point. I'm a little surprised it wasn't asked after the game to him, talking about him and Marner a little bit. Like, he was asked about the turnovers, but I don't think he was asked about kind of his, you know, what he said on the bench in that moment. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's maybe some conflict there. It's just the star players and coaches, sometimes they butt heads. We've seen it. I remember when Jared Bednar at one point got into it with Nathan MacKinnon on the bench. MacKinnon, if we know Nathan MacKinnon, especially, before the Avalanche got really good, he was not an easy person to deal with. It looked like he was willing to give it back to the coaches and guys when things weren't going well. And he's also a very blunt person. I mean, is not a very blunt person. He does like to try to kind of skate around issues, but
Beat around the bush is the term that you were looking for there.
that was also the one I was looking for, and I wasn't sure if that was gonna land properly. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Mitch Marner has tried his best right now to kind of say things are okay when we know things are not okay, and it wouldn't surprise me if things that are happening in the locker room, he's just trying to keep that in the locker room, especially with the head coach.
Who's trying to keep it in the locker room? Marner?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This guy's pretty public. I was chatting with James Myrtle today of The Athletic on Leafs Lunch, and he kind of brought something to my attention, or kind of reintroduced what had happened, I guess, to my attention. And it was that, remember back when the elite players comment was made and Mitch Marner was asked about the comments, and he came out and he said, yeah, Sheldon spoke to us, let us know exactly where he was coming from there, yada, yada, yada. He didn't have to say any of that. He made it a point to come out and make sure that he was bothered by the comment that was made the night before and came out and said something, which kind of made me realize, like, yeah, it's very similar to being called out and being sat in a game and then going and throwing a hissy fit in the tunnel. Like, these are two incidents now where you're sitting there and you're thinking, like, does this guy not like to take accountability? Because he apparently doesn't take it very well. And that's, to me, a big issue and a big red flag when it comes to Mitch Marner. And I think you said you saw some comments that was made on the 32 Thoughts podcast
Yeah.
earlier today. If you want to pull those up and if you want to chat about those, and we can kind of go back and forth and see exactly what we mean or what the situation is there. So if you want to if you want to give that a read, and we could chat about it in a moment.
Yeah, so NHL Watcher, who does a great job kind of pulling the, things from across the NHL. He's usually good for that stuff. So today, 32 Thoughts podcast was released, and they touched upon, Marner and Keefe, and Ellie Freeman kind of brought up this idea about, Marner and kind of his mentality when it comes to taking criticism, because we know he's taken his fair share of criticism the last few years in Toronto. So for those who are not following on YouTube, I do have the tweet up on YouTube here. This is what Friedman had to say. There's some people that have real thick skin and they can handle a lot and it doesn't bother them. And there's some people that don't. It's not a criticism. It's just the way it is. Marner has been around this his whole life. We've seen situations before where the stress gets high and it affects him. And I also suspect that some of the people around him don't make life easier on him with the things they tell him in terms of what might be said about him.
Okay, so what do we take from that? I guess when it comes to his personal life, there's some people around him that I guess maybe like his family and friends are saying like, hey, this is what the media is saying. We do know that that is a problem sometimes with the media market in Toronto. Like I've spoken with a lot of former NHLers. I was chatting with Peter Holland a couple of weeks ago, and even he was saying the same thing. He's like, yeah, when you get out of Toronto, it's a little bit easier just because, when you're struggling, it's not everybody and their friends and family. So when you're on the road, it's a little bit easier when you're struggling. But when you're at home and in Toronto, all your friends and family are telling you exactly what's being said about you. And, some of the stuff isn't very nice. If you've been on Twitter, you know that there's, not the nicest human beings can live on Twitter sometimes. And there's some garbage that's being spewed out there. And, people like to take it over the line. But I do think that it's worthwhile mentioning that, or using the point in where. Can you throw that back up there for a second, actually? Because there was one point in particular that I wanted to, that I want to quote and make sure that I got correct here.
Yeah.
It was essentially the part where he was talking about how, some people have thick skin and they can take criticism well. And Mitch Marner doesn't seem to take it as well as others. And I've seen it written. Yeah, there's some people that have real thick skin and they can handle it a lot. It doesn't bother them, and there are some people that don't. And Marner is one of those people. Is what we've been led to believe. And this is now a couple of times where he's been where Keefe has tried to hold him accountable, and he has had an outburst of some kind. And I personally don't like that, to be quite honest with you. And then I saw a piece today in The Athletic by Jonas Siegel. Love Jonas, but it was just the title kind of made me raise my eyebrow a little bit.
I know which one you're talking about.
Called Sheldon Keefe took a huge risk when he benched Mitch Marner. It could backfire. That's what it was called. I did go on to read the piece, and you guys should go read the whole thing yourselves. But essentially, he went on to say, if you lose Mitch Marner, you potentially are losing a leader in the locker room, and you could lose the rest of the room in the same vein that happened to Mike Babcock a couple of years ago. Yeah, here's the article that we're referencing here by Jonas Siegel. So I don't like the thought of that, right? Like, it should not be a risk at all benching Mitch Marner. Like, if the way that he's playing, I mean, Sheldon Keefe should be able to coach however he sees fit. And if one of his star players, if any player rather, gives up a couple of turnovers and plays poor hockey that way, and you look at the way that this team has been playing over the last little bit, I think he could do whatever he wants. I mean, we talked about it. We don't think he sat Marner long enough. and all of a sudden now sitting him for one shift can be considered uh, a detriment to their relationship because of the way that Mitch Marner could react to it. And to me, that's not good news if you're a Leaf fan and you're hoping for this to kind of blow over. It might not as quick as we think it should, at least.
Yeah, I saw that headline and I was very much not a fan of it because in a way it makes like I don't know if Jonas meant for this, but it makes Marner look worse than Keefe because like he's trying to make it seem like, Sheldon Keefe took a gamble and it wouldn't work. And I'm like, well, really what you're saying is that Mitch Marner can't take being sat in a game, which happens to a lot of players, whether they're good players or bad players. It's just something that happens. And I'm thinking to myself, Mitch Marner played under Dale Hunter with the London Knights. I understand this is junior hockey, but junior hockey is when lessons are taught. And I'm like, is this what Dale Hunter had to deal with when he was coaching Mitch Marner?
I swear to you, Dave, when I was living in London, Ontario, the year that Marner played. He was playing junior, but my final year there was his final year there, the draft plus 1 year. And when he got sent back down, yeah, he was torching the league. I think he, Kachuk, and a couple other guys. Like it was a great, Dvorak. They had unbelievable years. Like ended up with like 130 points or something like that. But anytime I went to a game, and I went to like I think 3 or 4 games that year to the London Knights, to get a glimpse of that squad. I was always very underwhelmed by Mitch Marner. I always felt that he was never giving enough effort because he felt that he was too good for the league. And, to a certain extent, he was. Like, remember, we always got in that conversation, and we always are with, guys who are too good for the OHL, but not good enough for the NHL, but they have to go back to the O because of the agreement. And, sometimes it's not best for their development. They get bogged down. And that could have been very well been the case with Mitch Marner. But I didn't like the attitude and the way that he was just like gliding around the ice and didn't have a very high give a bleep meter, it seemed. But then you would look on the score sheet at the end of the night and you have 3 points. Like that legitimately every single time I went to go see Mitch Marner.
Yeah.
Like he would make one nice play, and then he would end up with a couple of points at the end of the night. And you'd be like, but he didn't really do anything. Like I feel like these habits are kind of creeping up again, where he's not in a good headspace and he's just kind of floating out there and he's trying to make all these, cute plays, but this is the NHL. And when you make those cute plays, the opposition is going to make you pay. And that's exactly what we saw happen in the game against Anaheim. And that's why Sheldon Keefe was like, nah, you're not doing that anymore. You're going to sit. I'm going to send a message. Hopefully you can learn from this. And when you're out there Wednesday against Philadelphia, you make smart, crisp passes. You make tape-to-tape plays from the face of your stick, not the back of your stick, no more backhand passes. And we go out there and we play my game. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I hope it does. I'll be really, really keen on watching this game Wednesday night in the first couple of shifts out of Mitch Marner. But I gotta say it hasn't been a good look on Mitch Marner over the last couple of days here in Toronto.
And I'll say one more thing about this. When the Leafs, let's not forget who's the guy who made the pick for Mitch Marner in that draft in 2015. It was Mark Hunter.
Yeah.
It was not Kyle Dubas. So first off, I hope a lot of people remember that because there tends to be.
Hanifin? Was it Hanifin? Dubas really wanted Hanifin, I believe, the defenseman.
Some people wanted Hanifin. He went right after. I remember a friend of mine wanted. Some people wanted Werenski, defenseman there. Provorov was the guy that went there. But I just remember that happening, and people were like really confused, and I'm like, it's a London Knights guy. That's essentially what happened there. And
now, Marner is like, let's also not feel like that was not the wrong pick.
No.
That was the right pick. Mitch Marner is the best player out of all those guys. Let's not sit here and pretend like that was a bad pick.
Exactly.
But you want more out of this guy, and we have high expectations out of him because we've seen him perform at an extreme. The guy's back-to-back first-team right wingers, back-to-back, voted as the top right winger in all of hockey, back-to-back seasons. So, like, that's what's so frustrating. It's that there's such a high ceiling with this guy when he's engaged, and he just hasn't been that early this year. And I think that's why Sheldon Keefe is trying to send him a message, trying to break him out of that funk. But if Marner can't take it and he needs to be coddled a little bit, I don't know. Is there a different way, a different approach that you have to get through to Mitch Marner? I don't know. Perhaps there is. Maybe tough love isn't something that he nurtures to, unlike some guys. Like we've heard William Nylander come out and say, "Yeah, I like to be pushed and motivated that way. I like when they're hard on me. I like when Sheldon is hard on me. That kind of wakes me back up and gets me going again." Maybe Marner's not that way. So maybe it is, in fact, if you're getting called out in the media or you're getting embarrassed by getting sat, for a couple of shifts or a shift, maybe that he's not going to respond very well. But unfortunately, you're paid nearly 11 million bucks, Mitch. Like, I mean, you got to take some of the lumps, and if you don't like it, guess what? Perform
Don't
better.
take $11 million then if you don't like the pressure.
Don't take $11 million. Just perform better. Earn your money. Like,
That's also true. He didn't want to take the discount. He wanted to get paid like Auston Matthews. He believed he was equal to Auston Matthews in value. You got to bring it then, like Auston Matthews. I mean, Auston Matthews hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire either.
No,
but he's also not shying away from the criticism either.
he has not. But we'll see. Wednesday's an opportunity for them to kind of start back on a new path. It's a new month, and hopefully November can bring them brighter pastures, much like we saw a year ago. Right? Their November or their October last season was also not very good, and then they went on to go, I think, like 9-1-2 or something like that in November. I remember Jack Campbell didn't have a single regulation loss to start the year last year. So. Or in that month of November. So, perhaps they can have another hot month and this can all be a moot point come December 1st. But on November 1st, big talking point. And I'm sure we'll continue with these talking points because on the other side, we're going to get to some cosign, no sign Dave, one of our favorite games to play here on the podcast. But before we get into all of that, let me tell you about one of today's show sponsors, and that is Simply Safe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security, but you've been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Leafs listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. I'm telling you, this is like, did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts, they really spiked nationally. And that's where our friends at Simply Safe Home Security are offering their 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your Simply Safe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and a greater peace of mind this holiday season. Simply Safe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for the third straight year. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real so you can get priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I recommend. You can get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/URL today. This is their biggest discount of the year, so you won't want to wait. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnNHL. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. The Leafs end the month of October with a record of 4-4-2. They have 10 points on the year so far through the first month of the season. They currently sit in 7th place in their division, which is tied with the Montreal Canadiens and Detroit Red Wings, as well as the Tampa Bay Lightning, except Toronto has one more game played, so they have a worse win percentage than all three of those squads. They are -3 goal differential, which is the second worst in the division, and a 1-3-2 road record after that awful road trip out west that they just took. Those are some of the concerning trends and stats that the Maple Leafs have so far throughout the season. Also, 27th in goals per game by Toronto. Not typically what you want to see out of a club that is known for or expected to outscore their defensive woes. Well, when you're averaging only 2.7 goals per game, which is 27th in the league, your defensive woes need to be inexistent. And unfortunately, the defensive side of things have been even poorer than what has been out there offensively. So, just a couple of trends through the first month that I whipped together to tell you guys about, which is, again, some concerning stuff. But Wednesday's a new day, it's a new month, it's another game for them to try and get back on the horse and try and get things back on the rails. All right, Dave, let's play some cosine, no sign right now. So if you're new to the podcast, it's your first time listening, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving us a chance to entertain you, I suppose, and hopefully you've learned something or you've appreciated some of our aspects of how we think about some things here, especially in Leafland. But the way that this game works is we're going to make a statement to each other. If we agree with it, we're going to co-sign the statement. If we disagree, we're going to no sign the statement. Dave, I will let you go first, my friend.
You always let me go first, and it always backfires on you because my first cosign no sign is Justin Holl will not play in the lineup against the Philadelphia Flyers.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. Let me talk this one through, okay? Because do I believe he should be playing in the lineup? No, I don't. Not because he's the worst player or the worst option, because I actually think that he would be better served just to spend a night up in the press box, get a chance to maybe clear his head and just give him a night off. You know what I mean? Just allow him to do that, get a little bit of a reset up in the brain, up in the mentals up here. Maybe that would help him, I guess, be a less crappier defenseman that he's been so far. But I'm going to no sign it because I don't think it'll happen. I don't think that Sheldon Keefe will make that change. That would require two of Philip Kral and Victor Mete, both of those guys to be in the lineup, which I just don't see it happening. To be quite honest with you, not to say that either of them have really done much better than Justin Holl, but I think there's still just kind of that trust and that veteranness to Justin Holl that Keefe would probably prefer to have in the lineup. Plus, it's a bit of a rougher team, right? Philadelphia. Not that Justin Holl is that physical of a person, but like Mete is kind of small, and Kral's played one game. How much do you really trust him?
Well, technically 2 games.
2 games. But he's benched for the third period. So what does that tell you about what Keefe thinks of Philip Kral in that game against Anaheim? So I'm going to no sign it because I don't think it'll happen. But if it does, I would co-sign the move if that makes any sense.
Now I'm gonna add to it and say the reason why it's not less than likely is because also Timothy Liljegren isn't eligible to come back yet. So I think
is it this weekend though?
But I think it's 10 games, so he's made the 10 games, but it's 24 days, and he was on the 10th of October. So
right,
he still has a few more days before he can be.
This weekend he can play though, right?
And funny enough, this weekend is it's a back-to-back against the Bruins and the Hurricanes. You need Timothy Liljegren in one of those games.
Yes.
So is that where you're leaning towards, that this might be Justin Holl's one of his last chances to kind of secure his spot in the top, top 4?
If he's awful in this game, then the second Timothy Liljegren is healthy and capable of playing, Jordy Ben as well, I guess, for that matter.
Mhm.
I think that's probably maybe when Justin Holl can, they can afford to take him out of the lineup. But until that happens, until they have other reinforcements that aren't, 2 days in the league or Victor Mete, they'll probably just keep rolling with Holl unless they make a trade of some kind, which I don't expect to happen between now and Wednesday. So yeah, that's my thought process on Justin Holl and the Maple Leafs. All right. There's a bit of a okay. No, we'll start with this. We're not going to get loaded yet. All right. There's a bit of a loaded question out there. We're not going to get there quite yet. I'll start with one that's I think a good talking point at this point. Auston Matthews will still hit 60 goals this season, despite the early struggles.
I'm gonna co-sign it because because again he was able to put up 60 goals and not have a good October, so we know he can get hot, and when he gets hot, it just like when it rains, it pours with Auston Matthews. It's gonna be tough. Like that idea of him going 65 to 70 is almost very tough to see right now just because he's not scoring, but he's getting his looks. He's getting his chances. He is finding those scoring areas again. I'd like to see him convert, not just I'm gonna be selfish here and say, can we get more than 2 goals in a game, Austin? Can we get 2 goals? Like it has to only be one. Like this team needs more than 1 goal from me right now. But I think he realizes he needs to be better. He needs to be more of a catalyst on offense. And yeah, I think you can see that it can come for him. Mitch Marner's got to also play better for that to happen. Mm-hmm. So hitching the wagon on Marner to turn around for Matthews it seems like a tough ask, but I think it can happen.
Well, it's got to happen. Like
it has to. Yeah, it definitely has to.
Matthews, but like it's got to happen for the team's success, right? Like what we've seen over the course of the last week here in Leafs Nation just simply cannot continue. Just cannot continue at all the rest of the way. But here's a concerning statistic about Auston Matthews so far through 10 games this season. He's got 1 singular point at 5-on-5. 1 point at 5-on-5. Auston Matthews, and that's a goal that he scored, which I'm pretty sure was the Giordano goal that barely even went in, and that's the lone point that he has so far this year at 5-on-5. Got to be better.
That's where that line needs to be better. We kind of known that for a bit though, so yeah, that's where I think because he hasn't been produced, he's been scoring on the power play. It's just once he starts to get going on 5-on-5. That's where I think it can start turning around a bit for this team.
Yeah. All right. The other thing, too, that I'll say is Auston Matthews did not score his second goal of the year last year until November 2nd. So he also only had 1 goal through October a year ago and still was able to rattle off a 60-goal campaign. So it's possible, but then you're kind of banking on him scoring 50 in 50 games again, which is what he needed to do essentially for that to happen. So are you banking on that? I don't know if he'll necessarily do that again. 60 to me is a little bit tough. I think I'm going to take the under there and no sign it. I think like 56, 57. I don't know if he hits 60. I think everything went so right last year, and there's going to be slight regression with this group. I think I've come to realize this. I think, not terribly lower, but a little bit lower than 60, I think.
Well, I mean, at this point, he needs to score. He's at 3 right now in 10 games. So he needs to score 57 goals over the next 72 games.
Mm-hmm. Which he can do. He scored 60 in 73 games. So, I mean, he can do it. But again, that was also him scoring 51 goals in a 50-game span. Can he do that again? I don't know, but he's going to have to if he wants to get 60. We'll see. That'll be a fun one to keep track throughout the year for sure. All right, next one.
Next one for me is the next. I was looking at how many games I could put here. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. The next 6 games will determine Sheldon Keefe's future for the rest of the season.
Oh boy. Okay, let's pull up the Leaf schedule here so that I know exactly who we got for the next 6 games. Because it's a tough schedule, is it not? Like a really tough schedule, especially the next week. Because I know, so the Flyers are coming in tomorrow. That's going to be a tough out. Like, they're playing a lot better. Carter Hart's been outstanding so far this season, and Tortorella has them playing hard, and the Maple Leafs aren't playing hard right now. It's kind of their kryptonite is teams who play hard, and they typically play down to their opponents. So that's not even going to be a gimme, and that's a game that they certainly will need to win coming home off of that awful, awful road trip. But then after that, it doesn't get any easier. You got the Bruins on Saturday. Then you're in Carolina on the back-to-back. So you got to travel from Toronto to Carolina for a 5 o'clock start. What the hell were the schedule makers thinking when they did this? They got to go. So they got to play this game in Boston.
No, in Toronto.
In Toronto. And then after the game, fly out to Carolina, probably touch down by the time they get there, probably after midnight, and then it'll be pretty late by the time they get to their hotel, probably like 1-ish, maybe 2 by the time you get to bed. And then you've got a 5 o'clock start the next day. That's so bizarre. That's so stupid. Anyways, so you've got the Bruins, you've got the Hurricanes, then you've got the Golden Knights on Tuesday in Toronto, the Penguins, Crosby and the Pens, Friday, November 11th, roll in. Then you got the Canucks, and that's going to be an extremely spirited game because the Sedins and Luongo will be in town for the Hall of Fame ceremony that week. And then you also got you got to go out to Pittsburgh. So that's what is kind of lined up in the next 6 or 7 games here for Toronto. And then you've got the Devils who are playing some good hockey. You got the Sabres who are playing some really good hockey. Man, the next 3 weeks for Toronto are going to be difficult. And the problem is, if this team is only going to be 500 through that gauntlet of a schedule, what happens come November 20th and they're still a relatively 500 hockey team? Because 3 years ago, when that was the case, we do know exactly what Kyle Dubas did and the Maple Leafs did in mid to late November as a 500 hockey team.
And they did it on a road game, too.
So what was the question again? It will dictate if
this will dictate what Sheldon Keefe's future for the rest of the season will look like.
Yeah, cosign, 100% cosign, 100%. Like, he can't afford to go 500 in these next 7 games. He can't afford it. This team in those next 7 games, you think about it, so that's 14 points. He's got to grab at least 10 of them. Yeah. If he doesn't grab 10 of those 14 points, dude, I think they're shopping for a new coach.
And we're starting to hear names. Elliot Freeman brought up some names.
Oh, who did he bring up? I missed this.
He brought Alain Vigneault, former Canucks and Rangers coach.
And players.
Yeah, and Travis Green was another one. These are 2 guys that want to get back in the league and back to coaching again. He said Barry Trotz, funny enough, he feels like Barry Trotz wants to transition to a front office job as a GM.
He mentioned that when Trotz did his was he on Missing Curfew? Is that what he was on? Or Spin Chicklets? One of the two.
One of those two.
One of those 2 podcasts he was on. Anyways, one of those 2 podcasts that he was on, he did say that he feels like he could be a manager. He actually, I believe he said he feels he could do both jobs. That's what I think he said. And I mean, hey, if Dubas and Keefe are a package deal, cosign, no sign. If you are Brendan Shanahan and Barry Trotz says, I'll come coach your team, but I also want to be the general manager and do this thing Pat Quinn style, cosign, no sign, you gas both of them and bring in Trotzy.
If that's what's going to happen after, I'm going to no sign because there's not many coaches that can do both. Like, even like when Pat Quinn did it, it wasn't like he made it work. I mean, obviously, but it just does not really. It's just too much for unless you have a really good assistant general manager to kind of help with all the like other things.
Which they have 82 assistant general managers in Toronto. So you kind of do. I mean, Bill Belichick is like the star pupil of this experiment, right? Coach and GM. So
I wonder when the last
Barry Trotz think that he's like the Bill Belichick of the NHL. I don't know.
I can't remember the last time. I have to look this up. When was the last time in the NHL where a team had the coach also be the GM?
Well, I think in Florida, didn't we see the GM take over as the head coach for a little bit? And same thing, I believe, in
Lou
Jersey.
Lamoriello did it a bunch of times in New Jersey. I know that.
Yeah, but I think in recently in Florida, I believe I recall kind of
Well,
seeing
it happened in Anaheim when it happened in Anaheim. Didn't it happen in Anaheim? I think.
before Dallas Aikens came in.
Yeah, I think so.
Potentially, it kind of rings a bell. So it's not unheard of. It doesn't happen a lot, but that's more so like the GM is in the interim taking over coaching duties until they find a replacement. Whereas in this scenario, it's like Trotz is coming in and doing the whole thing, which I think would be just way too much to ask. Like that would be ridiculous to ask him to come in, be the new head coach, insert a culture, but also make sure you're working the phone lines and doing the day to day of being an
Leaving
NHL
on the
general
bench
manager.
during the game. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, well,
Hey
there's
guys, I'm just gonna go take this call. You know what to do on the power play here. I'll be right back. But no, Bob Murray was the last one to do it in 2019. He took
that's
over as
Murray.
you know.
Yes, yeah. All right, well, that's a fun little hypothetical. Fun little hypothetical. Well,
Mhm.
if Trotz gives you that ultimatum, you're no signing it. You're saying sorry, but no.
I would no sign it if he wants. I don't even know if I want him to be a GM because he hasn't really. He's been a coach.
Yeah,
You just have. Can you? Is he ready to be a GM? And I just don't know if that's something you want to do, especially in this market.
yeah, fair enough. All right, give me another one, pal.
Final one here. The Sabres and the Devils will be the surprise teams to make the playoffs and take a top 3 spot in the division while also doing it.
Both we're both of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're doing both of them.
I'm gonna no sign it. I think one of them will, and I think it's gonna be the Devils. I said the Devils are gonna make the playoffs right from the start of the year. I just think that they are a great team. I think they're built properly. If they could just get a save, they brought in Vanacek to help Blackwood. They're kind of in that Edmonton realm where it's like they've got everything else built around it, but can they get that goaltender in there that can help this team? So it depends on what they can get out of Blackwood and Vanacek. But you go and look at like the expected numbers. They're number one in the league in expected goals for, and like number two in expected goals against. So they're the number one offense and like the number two defense in the NHL, basically.
Which is
And I think that they're just a younger team, only getting better. And this is with very spotty, suspect goaltending. So I think that the Devils I could totally see making the playoffs. The Sabres, look, I think they're off to a really good start. I think Tage Thompson just rattled off a 6 point
6
night.
points, baby.
6 point night against the Detroit Red Wings. They won 8-3 last night. Insane. 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists. And look, Tage Thompson is an absolute ox. Like this man is so much to handle. He's such a good player. So currently, what are they? Second in the Atlantic, 12 points. They're 6-3 to start the year, plus 12 goal differential. I just don't see it because I think Toronto's going to pick it up. They'll end up with an Atlantic spot. I think Boston hangs on to an Atlantic spot. And then I think Tampa will also figure their stuff out and end up with a playoff spot in the Atlantic. So I think it's just there's too much competition there for Buffalo to like fully take that next step and solidify themselves within like the top three of that group. And then in order for them to make the playoffs, I guess they would have to make it in over a wild card team in the Metro. I mean, it's possible, I suppose, but I think that there's Carolina, New Jersey, I have making it. New York, I have making it. So then you got to probably compete with Washington, Pittsburgh. You're going to compete probably with Ottawa, who I think is going to be there. Florida, who is going to be there competing for another wild card spot. So for me, I'm going to no sign it with Jersey making the playoffs, but Buffalo does not.
Okay, it's very fair.
Yeah. All right. Last one for you, pal, and then we'll wrap things up here on the podcast. which one do I want to go with here? Okay. Matt Murray will not play again in 2022.
Oh, so you're thinking this is going to keep him out for the next 2 months?
Mhm.
I'm going to no sign it because I think what's going to happen, he's going to play like 1 or 2 games and maybe something else is going to happen. That's where I think is going to. You should have put like less than 5 games, and I probably would have co-signed that.
Okay, Matt Murray. Matt Murray will not play. We'll make it 122 minutes of goaltending for the Maple Leafs for the rest of 2022.
And you
So
make
that would be over 2 games.
Oh man. I'm gonna no sign it because I think he'll battle through a couple of games, and then if it's
Battle. Dog, he lasted 1 game, and then sorry guys, I can't do it. My groin area thigh thingy's acting up. I'm sorry, can't do it. I'm out probably 6 weeks. I'm thinking give or take a month. Like, what do you mean he'll battle?
I just think
This
he'll
guy doesn't battle through the sniffles. He sneezes. He's like, I can't do it tonight, guys. I just sneezed. Do you hear that? I sneezed. Like, I was up last night, literally blinking too much. I don't think I could do it. I strain. I got a headache from blinking. Sorry. Like,
ouch. Ouch. I'm just thinking, when did they put him on LTIR? Because
I haven't heard anything about Matt Murray. Like, anything.
on October 15th, so he's got again the 24 days, 10 games thing, so likely mid-October. I just think to do like that 2 games, I think unless it's like some fluke, because this felt like a fluke injury, like he didn't get hit, it just happened during a drill. That could potentially be the reason why you're putting only 2 games, and because of the type of injury, I think he can get through. I think he can get through a couple games within this stretch. And look, they might not even take him off LTIR in a month. They might just will give a little bit longer to make it. I mean, at the same time, Eric Schalgren. I don't know if the Leafs are going to want to have to keep putting him out. If they think Murray's ready, they're going to go with him. Because I don't know if they're going to want to go with Eric Schalgren. Like, this is not to say Eric Schalgren's been absolutely dreadful, but he hasn't been great. So,
Yeah.
That's the other thing to keep in mind there, too. They don't have the luxury of being patient, like too patient with Matt Murray.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I was being very facetious there.
I know.
Matt Murray's a battler, okay? Matt Murray's a battler. We know that. I was just,
Do you want to give me your other one just in case?
Well, Jake Muzzin, does he play again this season?
I think there's a greater chance that Jake Muzzin doesn't play because he's going to see specialists out in LA.
Yeah.
Like I was like, damn. Like, I didn't think they were saying it could have been a neck strain, could have been whiplash. I'm like, if he's seeing if he's seeing a specialist out in LA, that's serious, man. Especially with a neck injury.
I should do more than just headline reading. Absolutely, I should. But
That's number one thing I always tell people.
I know. It's more so. I think I saw it. I don't even know where I saw it. Somewhere, maybe I was just perusing Twitter and I just saw literally just like the headline or something. But something to do with maybe someone wrote an article or something about Jack Eichel leads the way in the NHL for disc replacement surgeries. I wonder if there's anything to do with that with Jake Muzzin. I have absolutely no idea, and I don't want to speculate, but I wonder if has anything to do with Muzzin's neck injury or his situation. If this is something he would consider if it is a neck injury, because it seems like it worked out well for Jack Eichel at the time. It was kind of the first time we've seen something like that done. Yeah. That procedure specifically that Eichel got. And again, I don't know if this is the same issue or the same problem, or if this could even solve what's happening with Jake Muzzin. But I wonder if this has anything to do with that.
It could. It honestly could, right? Like especially for him to go all the way to LA. And now some people thought maybe because this is someone
Where
he
is
knows in LA.
trying to see where that doctor was from. In he was in Denver actually. So the Dr. Chad
Right.
Prusman,
I remember that. Yeah. The
he was
surgery
in
was
Denver,
different.
so not LA. So maybe not. Maybe not.
But I no, I do think like when you're hearing he's seeing a specialist in LA for a neck injury, that didn't seem like it was serious at the time, but didn't seem like it was going to be career or season threatening.
Well, it didn't until Marner was like, if he comes back, and then started talking about, he's got to think about life after hockey. Then he doubled down on it again the following day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what perks your ears a little bit. And you're like, this isn't the first time. This is now twice in the last 48 hours Mitch Marner has said this. And we know that Jake Muzzin is Mitch Marner's best friend on the team. Which also maybe that's maybe Jake Muzzin's like a Marner whisperer, and not having him around maybe doesn't allow him to kind of have that outlet. That's is why he's got a bit of a short fuse recently, and he kind of is doing these outbursts because he doesn't have Muzzin to kind of be a sounding.
Patrick Carlo was also the Marner whisperer too when he was on the team.
Yeah, maybe they got to get a Marner whisperer. Why can't Jason Spezza be a Marner whisperer up in management? Make that one of the side jobs. Make it one of these 82 AGMs. Be a Marner whisperer. They got rid of Greg Harden, eh? Did you know that?
They did? Wow.
Yeah. The mental coach that they had hired last year, that they went and talked about how he did all these wonders with Jack Campbell, with Mitch Marner. He is the mental coach for Tom Brady, Michael Phelps, all these guys. And they didn't really renew him over the course of the summer. So he's not with the club anymore, I don't believe.
Interesting.
It is kind of interesting, especially when you look at what's going on right now. It is, in a way, a little bit interesting. Anyway, Dave, we're kind of getting off topic here. Let's wrap it up for today as we approach the 50-ish minute mark of the podcast. If you stuck it through the whole 50 minutes, thank you so much. We really do appreciate all the love and support that we get from our listeners. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, Locked On Leafs. And I'll be honest, we get to look at the analytics. There's a lot of people who watch Locked On Leafs or listen to it on Spotify or on iTunes or Podcatcher, wherever you get your audio from, that are not subscribed. We would love it if you did subscribe. Get that daily content delivered directly to you so you don't have to go and search for it. You get that daily Leafs coverage every single morning from myself and my good pal Dave here. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast, though. I'd like to thank you all for listening and support the show. Remember to sub up wherever you get your podcast, also up on YouTube as well. Follow myself on Twitter at @make_Canuck. Follow Dave at @D_Morassutti. Also, you can follow the show at Locked On Leafs on Twitter. We'll be back for another episode tomorrow. Get the Leafs a chance to redeem themselves as they take on the Philadelphia Flyers. We will tee that up for y'all tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked